Hi, I finally got round this morning to watching Nomadland, this year's Best Picture winner at the Oscars. It's currently available to stream via Disney Plus. I'm sure it'll get a more widespread disc release later in the year. It's the story of a woman named Fern who has lived in a small town in Nevada for most of her adult life. But following the closure of the town's slate mining business and the death of her husband, she opts to live a more nomadic existence, packing up the belongings that she needs in a van, dumping the rest in a storage facility, and setting out onto the road, becoming part of a community of modern day nomads living in the wake of the Great Recession and picking up jobs and parking places where she can. It's based on a book by Jessica Bruder, adapted and directed by Chloe Zhao. And although it's a subject that is something that I hadn't been aware of and is very interesting to examine, particularly the way that these people have been almost left behind by changes in the economy and forced into an existence that they have not chosen, despite comments by some of the characters. Um, I can't help but feel that it suffers somewhat by having this veneer of fictionalization applied to it. With the exception of Frances McDormand in the lead role and David Strathairn as one of the nomads with whom she strikes up a tentative relationship, virtually all the other nomads are played essentially by themselves, by real people with many years' experience in this world. So I was interested to hear more about their lives, but instead it's filtered through this fictionalization, through the experiences of this fictionalized or fictional real main character. Zhao is clearly a very talented director. The film is less a through line of narrative and more composed of a series of details, a series of vignettes that follow Fern over the course of a year, starting and ending with her working in a cavernous Amazon fulfillment center, having gone from one massive industry to another, working on a production line. And during the year, living from her van, driving around, meeting new people, getting information on how to live more responsibly on the road and carrying out her own repairs. And picking up jobs where she can in places like maintenance in a camping ground in a national park, or um, later working in a roadside restaurant. Um, we see little details and vignettes of what it's like living in this kind of lifestyle. But again, it's all filtered through this fictionalized world. A documentary would be so much more illuminating, I feel, and so much more thorough, perhaps, being able to present a much broader overview instead of just one person's experience. We do find out later on in the film the reason why Fern is the way she is. She's had this kind of wandering spirit her whole life, and she only really settled down for the sake of her husband. But even then, her house in this tiny town in Nevada, through the back door, opened out into this huge vista of desert with the mountains in the far distance. Um, Ultimately, she adjusts to life on the road, and the film is very non-judgmental about the situation. We're told that many people um, often end up in this situation through trauma or personal circumstances. One man has severe PTSD as a result of his experiences in the Vietnam War, so he can't be with large crowds or loud noises. So living out in vans in small communities suits him very well. Fern, too, is someone who is very restless and who loves to journey. So it suits her very well. It's a very well acted film, although really only the two lead roles are acting. There is one scene where one character is describing um, a personal story, and I noticed that her eyes flicker between what's clearly the eye line with Frances McDormand's character and presumably Chloe Zhao's eye line sitting behind the camera. So it's that dividing line between, is this a performance or is this just someone telling a story about their life to camera? And I feel that the fictionalization gets in the way. The photography, particularly, is very beautiful. Um, Zhao has a real eye for the desert at dusk, and I've even seen in some of the early pictures from Eternals, the Marvel Cinematic Universe film she's releasing at the end of the year, that she's preserved that same eye of wilderness landscapes captured at the magic hour. Um, so it's not a bad film by any means. It's a study of a lifestyle and um, a group of people of whom I wasn't aware. But for all that, I don't think it's illuminating any deeper truths that I wasn't already aware of. The fallout from the Great Recession, how it was those who were the most vulnerable who suffered the most, um, and whether with little or no safety net for such a precarious existence. Um, but as a portrait of life in this manner, it's well made. It's on its own terms. It's a very good film. I'm not sure I would have put it in my 10 films of 2020, and I doubt it'll stay in my 10 films of 2021. But it's not a film without value. It has something to say, and it has a world it wants to present. And on those terms, and for presenting these people in a very open and non-judgmental way, it deserves an awful lot of credit. And as my first insight into the film world of Chloe Zhao, it's certainly very interesting.